Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/MaliciousCompliance. In today's episode, I had my employees call and wake up my boss every 15 minutes. My father abused and kicked me out of my home. So I took everything. Boss told me if you don't like it, then leave. Jim won't cancel me and makes me read my contract. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. I had my employees call and wake up my boss every 15 minutes. I supervised a glass manufacturing department. One night we had an issue with a thermocouple that controls the temperature of the glass. Because it was creating nuisance alarms, the operator disconnected it and forgot to notify the next shift to monitor it manually. We lost control of the furnace for a couple of hours and scrapped product. The plant manager came in that morning screaming and ripped the entire staff a new one. We were trying to explain that the thermocouple needed to be fixed, but instead he continued to yell at us, tell us we were idiots, and told us to monitor it and notify him every time it went into alarm or else he would fire us. To further reprimand us, he insisted that we call him at home in the evening every time the temperature went into alarm so he could ensure we were doing our jobs. What he did not know, and what we knew, was that the alarm for the broken thermocouple happened about every 15 minutes. My operator was worried and asked me what he should do. Since the plant manager was so insistent, I told the operator to wait until after midnight, then call and inform him every time it happened according to his direct request. The plant manager came into work the next morning very bleary-eyed, and sheepishly told us that we did not have to do that again. He finally listened to us, and we got the problem fixed. My father abused and kicked me out of my home. So I took everything. I'm not going to drag this out too long, but to get right to the point. My father is very religious to the point we couldn't do a lot of things that would be considered normal. Christmas, dating, etc. I didn't hate my dad by any means, he taught me a lot. However, he was very abusive. As a black man, he seemed to think the only way to discipline a child was to knock that sense into them. He would constantly get angry at minor things and punch my brother in the soft part of his stomach. I suppose we both just normalized that abuse. And as I got older, I learned to not take the punches and actually block. The first time I did it, shocked my dad. It was so satisfying not to cry when my dad hit me and just look at him with this blank expression. Doing this definitely made him more angry, as he would try to make me cry. I feel like it gave him some sick satisfaction. You'd think all of this would make me hate him. Nope. My idiotic self just didn't seem to register how bad this was. I'd try to justify it as him teaching me a lesson. But eventually, the last straw would come. So I was 16 at the time, and my father gave me this ultimatum. Continue school, or get a job and pay a majority of the bills. He wasn't working at the time, and I hated school. While my grades were average to high, I just didn't want to be a part of that environment anymore. Our overall bill was about £1,300, and I'd have to give £600 of my paycheck, with my brother paying the other half. I decided to just go with it and look for a job. Now, a week into my job search, my father started shouting at me, saying I was taking way too long. Keep in mind, when my brother left school, he gave him over 2 months to find something. He ended up putting me in front of a computer and made me apply to things all day and night. I ended up going to bed at 6 a.m. the next morning. I got so desperate, I applied for McDonald's and within a day got the job. Unfortunately, it was one of the worst experiences of my life. A lot of inappropriate touching and horrible acquaintances. Anyway, a year into working, a new girl joined the team, and as cliché as it sounds, I fell for her instantly. I went out of my comfort zone and just decided to flirt with her. Within that day we were dating. It was amazing. Obviously, I couldn't tell me dad about this. So we hid it for another year as we dated. Within that time, we ended up having S*X. S*X before marriage would be a big no-no. My father later found out. Now this part is pretty invasive. But he had connected to my WhatsApp messages and was reading them on his laptop while I slept. I believe he actually opened my phone while I slept, using my thumb recognition. I was chewed out the next morning and told to break up with her, which I didn't. Because she was a WH*re and didn't really love me. He then told me to get out of the house and never come back. I will give some context for this. My dad likes to use this line when we're in trouble. He'll make us go outside our flat and then a minute later call us back inside. He had never really gotten to that point with me. But my brother experienced it all the time. I'd always told him that if our father ever did that to me, I'd just leave. So as you can imagine, I left. I walked for hours while my dad was blowing up my phone to come home. If you thought this was because he cared and wanted me to be safe, you'd be wrong. He would later send texts telling me not to tell anyone what was happening. It's none of their business, and I'm not ruining his reputation. I wasn't planning on telling people anyway. But the fact he said that shows he only cares for others' opinions. Because I had left so quickly, I hadn't had time to grab anything. I had a phone and the clothes on my back. I had to call my girlfriend for moral support, and after talking, she straight away booked a hotel. I was so thankful. Lucky for me, I was getting paid the next day. So I'd be able to get my money and hopefully rent a place. To this day I haven't spoken to my father, and I completely blocked him. And while I struggle to pay my rent every month, it's still way better than my situation prior. The story does have a happy ending. Remember how I wasn't able to get my stuff? Well, my father had gone on holiday, one of my friends tipped me to this. So my girlfriend and I went back to the house and broke in using a credit card. My dad never locked his door, so if you just swiped a card through the door with enough pressure, you could eventually make it turn and get in. I was actually struggling to do this, until the neighbor came by and actually did it for me. He was such a good guy. I know he just assumed we were locked out, but he really saved my life more than he knows. I took everything I wanted, including stuff like the TV. Since it was my money that paid for all of that. I can only imagine how shocked my dad was when he came home and found all my stuff gone. He was probably going to sell it to cover the rent. Boss told me if you don't like it, then leave. When I was younger I worked as an engineer for a small company. The owner, who I'll call Jake, let me know before I started that I would be doing about 10-hour days, 6 days a week for about 6 months, but that I would have to be flexible. Some days they wouldn't have work for me and other days I'd be expected to stay a few hours late. This didn't bother me too much as I wasn't too tight for money, and I didn't mind staying behind a few extra hours occasionally. I got to work and was told to follow instructions from the owner's brother, Steve. He was an arrogant character, who always thought he knew how to do everyone else's job better than them. We butted heads a few times, but nothing major. A few months in, I found a new job starting in a week that paid better. Later on that day I had another disagreement with Steve. The situation was petty, but it's his response that really confused me. It ended with him screaming in my face, "If you don't do as I say, then you can F***king leave." So I packed my stuff and left. Steve was a little confused, thinking I'd just fall in line. He was too arrogant to apologize, and I had a job lined up. Side note for people not in the UK, I was working a 0-hour contract. This means I get an hourly wage, but I'm not afforded some labor rights like a set salary, minimum work hours, or notice for dismissal. This works both ways though, so I can leave the job whenever I want with no notice. I decided to call up Jake since he'd always been chill and told him what happened. He told me he needed me, and I should just return to work. I told him unless he controls Steve and made him apologize, there was no way I was coming back. He refused, so I told him I'll send in my final timesheet. 2 weeks later, and I've started my new job. I still haven't been paid for my final week, so I called Jake. He told me that since you didn't give notice for leaving, you owe me for lost product of work. He said if I didn't like it, I should sue him and recommended I should just take the loss and move on. This was complete BS. A couple months go by until I finally find time to file for small claims court. Few days after sending him notice, Jake paid my money including court fees and extra. He actually called me up apologizing for the confusion. He wanted to know when I could return to work. I'd heard from one of my ex-coworkers that because of the infrequent hours, people would leave as soon as they were told they wouldn't have work the next day. Others would leave when they realized how much of a jerk Steve was. They'd gone through about 7 different workers in the time I was gone and struggled to keep anyone for more than a week. I told him I'd think about it. I managed to string him along for a few weeks before he stopped calling me. The moral of the story is that if you think you're being treated unfairly, you shouldn't just put up with it. Your self-respect isn't worth compromising. Don't settle for being treated like shit, especially when you're willing to go above and beyond for them. Jim won't cancel me and makes me read my contract. So around July of last year, I am coming up on the end of my contract for a big national gym chain that, let's just say, you can visit anytime. So, I try and call and get directions to cancel, and get a voicemail box that is full. I call their 800 number and am told only the local office can cancel me. I call my bank and ask if I can block auto debit, but because it is a check debit they can only block a specific amount and there is a fee. I scan my contract and it says I have to cancel in writing with 30 days notice regardless of my contract end date. I am pretty furious at this point because the gym was closed completely due to COVID and I was wasting money. I hadn't been too concerned while my contract was going, but now I just wanted to end my association with them. I write the letter with my membership number, email, and phone number, and send the letter certified with my fob. 2 months later, I notice I am still being charged, and they have billed me an additional $60 for my annual access fee. Now I am livid. I find the customer service email and explain the situation with specific dates of calls, letters, and attempted visits to the office. I ask that my membership be cancelled and a refund for the past several months and the annual renewal. I receive a rather curt response saying they will start my cancellation, but I will have one more monthly charge because there is a 30-day notice. I respond asking them to read my message and see that is what I did already by mail. Apparently the local manager has been letting mail pile up as they don't even have someone at the office part-time. No one has seen my letter. I say this to the email rep. She asks me to read my contract and states that even if I can demonstrate the letter was sent I would still be on the hook for the 30 days and the annual fee. She says I need to read my contract if I have any questions. And I do. Turns out, near the end of this very long document, is section 20.1, which states the following. Unexpected events. We are not responsible if members cannot use our club, because of an event caused by a natural force, such as a fire, or a flood, or a road or building closure or something similar beyond our reasonable control. If this continues for more than 30 days, then either you or we may cancel this agreement immediately by written notice. No fee will apply. So, I respond with this new knowledge I have and point out the gym had been closed 90 days prior to my original letter, and even greater than my email cancellation request. I also threaten the following if they don't refund me back to my original contract end date. I will pay people I know to picket their gym. I will hand out flyers telling people about this provision of the contract so others in the middle of contracts will be able to cancel without a fee. I will publish an article in our local online newspaper about the trouble I have had offering advice to others. And I make it clear that I have all the documentation including phone statements to prove it is all true. 3 days later I was called by a regional director with an apology and a full refund of over $240 that had been inappropriately taken, and a little extra. For those wondering, I am sharing this now, because I understand many people in California where the lockdown was more strict have gone through this, and they deserve to know how not to be abused. And remember, if someone tells you to read your contract, do it. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.